Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Download numbers continue to be really strong, so I'd like to thank the FCC chairperson and, of course, the Riyadh Comedy Festival for making it all possible. Jon Stewart was at the New Yorker Festival. Several topics came up, including the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Hey, I talked about bourbon all weekend. There's only so much I could do here. These are the news stories. Jon was discussing comics like Bill Burr and Louis C.K., who both performed at the Riyadh Comedy Festival. Jon Stewart said, so, it's hard for me to watch that sort of thing. It was like, I don't touch other people's money. It's hard, man. I thought the only person who should have done it was Pete Davidson because they owe him money. I want to fix my house. I want to operate with integrity, but I don't want to gatekeep. I think a lot of comics who came out and really crapped on those guys, I know a couple of them, and I know they actually like to be like garbage humans, so it's hard for me to watch that sort of thing. I would prefer if they would have just come out and said it's money and not like a way to start a conversation. Like, would you have started the conversation for $2,500? That's the difference. Am I disappointed that Pete Davidson did it? Yes, but at least he was honest about the reason. Jon continued, look, I worked for Apple. There are a lot of people who believe that Apple is exploitative in a way that's horrific. Not me. I love my friends at Apple Podcasts, especially the editorial team that promotes podcasts. Great humanitarians, just want to say that. Jon Stewart, however, said, we all have our lines that we're willing to cross. None of us are Diogenes. We get into a problem where we're unforgiving in any way. We offer no grace, and that doesn't mean I don't have lines that I draw, but that if people cross them, I won't do. But I do try to not be so rigid in the way that I think society has become. The topic moved to Kimmel Gate and Colbert Gate. Jon Stewart said, the comedians are not the victims of this administration. We are a visible manifestation of certain things, but the victims are the people that are struggling to have any voice and are being forcibly removed from streets by hooded agents. Those are the victims of this administration. Will Jon continue to host The Daily Show one day a week? His contract is up in December. He told the New Yorker Festival, we're working on staying. Stewart said he plans to keep fighting, urges others to do the same. He says you don't compromise in what you do, and you do it until they tell you to leave. As for the Kimmel suspension, I think it rattled everyone to some extent, but it also presented great opportunity, and so I don't know that we've had as much fun as we did that Thursday morning. Coming up with all the stupid little stuff that you see, including gold pictures and red ties, it gave us some purpose. As for Donald Trump, Jon Stewart said there's a reason Donald Trump came to power, and that is, in the general populace's mind, government no longer serves the interests of the people it purports to represent. That's a broad-based, deep feeling, and that helps when someone comes along and goes, the system is rigged, and people go, yeah, it is. Jon struggled to name a national leader for the Democrats right now. Audience members suggested that leader could be Jon Stewart himself. Jon said, if we really got to that point, it's also a function of frustration, a cry of desperation. I'm other. I'm none of the above. The Democratic Party is ripe for what happened to the Republican Party in 2016, but hopefully it'll be somebody who uses that power for good and not for self-aggrandizing and not for their own gentrification. He discussed the No Kings rallies. When 7 million people show up in America on a weekend for anything, honestly, anything, we're not Russia and their history of autocracy or dictatorship. It's an alien culture to us, and it's uncomfortable, and that discomfort may be our saving grace. I don't think we're going to wear that well, and that doesn't mean we're not going to be in some kind of soft autocracy where news is controlled, but we have a lot of different avenues, and suppression creates opportunity, and a populace that is thirsty for inspiration and leadership and morality and integrity, that's fertile ground for that opportunity. John Oliver opened his show Sunday night showing images of the White House demolition project. Jon said, those images are distressing, especially when you know it's all to build a giant ballroom in a style best described as Med Spa Versailles. And yet, the demolition of the White House, a metaphor that, if anything, is too on the nose, was just the tip of Trump's iceberg this week. Oliver then showed a news report where Trump was trying to get $230 million from the Justice Department. Oliver said, I should say, Trump has said he'd donate any settlement to, in his words, charity or something, but incredibly, we're still not done because Trump also posted an AI video of himself dumping crap on No Kings protesters, abandoned trade negotiations with Canada after seeing a TV ad he didn't like, and authorized a $20 billion bailout to Argentina to ensure that their experiment with libertarianism works out. Oliver said the most shocking move last week was the military strikes against the fishing boats. Oliver said, I've watched enough JAG to know that the typical approach to drug boats is to intercept them and arrest the suspects, not murder them, with no due process. And all of this is bad enough before you learn that Trump is planning strikes on cartels by land as well. He apparently plans to launch strikes on suspected drug traffickers in Venezuela without congressional approval, saying, we're just going to kill people. They're going to be like dead. The kind of chilling statement you expect to hear from a serial killer or the mastermind behind Panera Bread's charged lemonades, but not ideally the President of the United States. I'd be happy to talk about bourbon again. There's no more bourbon stories. Jim, do some press. David Cross was asked by Vanity Fair. There's a big David Cross article. I originally wasn't going to do any of it today, but it kind of themes up here with what we've been talking about. So I'll pull this part. David Cross, what do you think about Kimmel Gate and Colbert Gate? Cross said it's awful. And it's because there are a handful of people that want to make billions and billions of dollars, and the president is so powerful that he can make life difficult, much like a mob boss might make life difficult for these people. And we've seen this time and time again. If you want to do this thing, then you better give me a piece. Quid pro quo stuff. Trump is the logical endpoint, but something like this has been in place for a long time. It's just people without morals or ethics, or I should say they have morals and ethics. They're just very crappy. It's about money, you know? It's unfortunately a part of the country we set up for ourselves. Again, the steps have been taken towards this. Not just Trump. Trump's just the right guy at the right time. David Cross was asked, what can comedians, artists, everyday people, what can you do? Cross said, you know what? I've been really emboldened by this No Kings movement. All the other stuff goes in one ear. We don't have the bandwidth to process it all. It's a constant stream of outrageous garbage and lies. No Kings cuts through all that. My hope is that people will start to wake up to the idea that all this crap on Fox News and Newsmax and America First or whatever, saying these things that protesters are anti-American, they're terrorists. I mean, these are your neighbors, and there's no violence. It's people from all walks of life going, no, we don't want this. We're not going to accept this. It deflates the Trump administration in a real way. Oh, I had this whole podcast gate thing I want to do. All right, I guess today's going to be a long episode. I'd bounced this a few times already because there's so much going on. All right, let me talk about this. So remember the Golden Globes Podcast Awards? So the newsletter Like and Subscribe looked into this. They say they emailed the Shots Podcast Network CEO, who has worked with Theo Von's podcast and has been reported as his manager in reputable outlets. So that person was asked about this, and the newsletter said that person responded, I'm honored. Theo Von is mentioned by the Golden Globes, but I have no interest in engaging with them or commenting. The newsletter says several hours after the story was published, I heard from Von's publicist, who said his client is still educating himself about the Globes and its process, adding, Theo Von does not have a manager, and the person quoted is not authorized to speak on Theo's behalf, nor is involved with anything related to Theo's submission. That's interesting. The newsletter says, I also hear multiple podcasters are still waiting to bother with the $500 fee to submit themselves for consideration before the October 31st deadline. Then there's the whole thing I mentioned last week where, you might want to advertise. It's good to advertise a podcast. The newsletter writes, according to the sales deck slides I reviewed, an eligible podcast can pay $25,000 to become a podcasting FYC Fest supporting partner, which gets the pod a spot on a Variety moderated panel. The full kit and caboodle of Variety coverage and social posts and a full-page color ad on the Variety FYC Fest preview out November 11th. $35,000 apparently gets you a custom 15-minute Variety moderated conversation, and $75,000 you'll be awarded the Variety Creative Impact Award in Podcasting. Wait, so if I just spend $75,000, I'm going to be in Variety and be like, hey, Johnny Mac, the guy in the basement, wins the Impact Award in Podcasting. Ooh, okay. Fun paragraph here. The newsletter writes, the Variety playbook here echoes what my colleague Richard Rushfield, the Ankler, reported last year when the publication tried to sell a new program around the Golden Globes. Quote, throwing an intimate little dinner for your candidate to which you can invite 30 to 40 guests who happen to be Globes voters. Apparently that program was stopped. Continuing, they write, they can report based on conversation with multiple sources that this was in fact the second top 25 podcast list, after the first list inadvertently omitted several wildly popular podcasts. I believe Conan is still not on the list. Nikki Glazer will host this year's Golden Globes.
Gossip Corner, whispers in the street. Gossip Corner, probably about Pete. Gossip Corner, where the rumors meet with Johnny Mac. It's always a treat. Gossip Corner, whispers in the street. Gossip Corner, probably about Pete. Gossip Corner, where the rumors meet with Johnny Mac. It's always a treat.
Pete Davidson, just back from the Riyadh Comedy Festival. He went to see some New York Giants football, right? He's from Staten Island. Obviously, he'd be a New York Giants fan. A guy his age should be a Giants. Nope. He was there to root for the Eagles. Yes, Pete Davidson, seen wearing a green Eagles winter hat. Not only dressed Eagles, he made fun of the Giants by holding up a fake gravestone that had the words R.I.P. G-Men written on it. Pete did this during the fourth quarter of the game. Pete was seen on the field before the game, taking in the warm-ups. Eagles 38, Giants 20. It was the second Eagles game Pete Davidson has been seen at this season. I guess a couple of recent Super Bowls helped Pete Davidson become an Eagles fan, but who knows? Maybe he grew up an Eagles fan. You know, that guy, a guy that age, you think would like Eli Manning era Giants and the 2 Super Bowls there, but what do I know? Nate Bargatze on Gossip Corner. He was spotted in Chicago. He apparently stopped by Jake Melnick's Corner Tap, which sounds like an awesome place. Apparently, Nate was a server at Jake Melnick's Corner Tap 20 years ago. On social media, they said, "Welcome back to Chicago, Nate, and the Big Dumb Eyes Tour." Got that hashtag in there. Good job. Thanks for celebrating 2 jam-packed shows at the United Center with us at your old stomping grounds. They tagged enough people that it made my radar, so good job, social media person at Jake Melnick's Corner Tap. Did tell you that Nate was going to be on the college football show with ESPN on Saturday morning. He made his pick. The undefeated Cougars were number 11 coming into the game against the Iowa State Cyclones. Nate picked BYU. He said, "This is a business decision right here. I've got 4 shows in Salt Lake City. BYU, baby. BYU, 41. Cyclones, 27. Out today on Netflix, Mo Amer, his new special, Wild World. His 3rd for Netflix. I've liked his other specials. The new hour includes a celebration of his Palestinian heritage, reflections on the birth of his son, and a critical look at the TSA. In Chicago, the night manager of the Laugh Factory was detained by federal agents on Friday, according to NBC Chicago. This happened outside the Laugh Factory, Chicago. Around 9:20 a.m., Chicago police responded to a call of a battery in progress. NBC News reports upon arrival, they observed federal agents engaged in a physical altercation with 2 individuals. There's a video that shows a crowd gathering as masked agents in camouflage uniforms marked police wrestle with 2 people. As Chicago police officers stand nearby, the CPD said their officers did not make any arrests and left the scene once the area was cleared. An eyewitness said federal agents jumped out of the car and grabbed the manager while he was with his mother. Border Patrol said the individual was detained and turned over to the FBI for investigation. Another eyewitness said they didn't do anything. And that is your comedy news for today. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.